Hey there, fellow soil enthusiasts. Welcome back to Soilsage Chronicles. Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and fundamental processes happening right beneath our feet, the nitrogen cycle. If you've ever wondered why your plants seem to thrive in some spots and struggle in others, or why that expensive fertilizer isn't giving you the results you expected, understanding nitrogen's journey through your garden ecosystem is absolutely game-changing. I remember the first time I truly grasped how nitrogen moves through soil. It was like someone had handed me the secret decoder ring for gardening success. Suddenly, everything from companion planting to crop rotation made perfect sense. So grab your favorite gardening beverage and let's explore this incredible underground network together. Think of the nitrogen cycle as nature's most sophisticated recycling program, one that's been running smoothly for billions of years without any help from us. Nitrogen makes up about 78% of our atmosphere. But here's the catch. Most plants can't use atmospheric nitrogen directly. It's like having a treasure chest of gold that's locked tight with no key in sight. The nitrogen cycle transforms this abundant but unusable atmospheric nitrogen into forms that plants can actually absorb and utilize. This process involves several key players: bacteria, fungi, plants, and even lightning. Each plays a crucial role in keeping this cycle spinning, ensuring that nitrogen continuously moves from the atmosphere to the soil, into plants, and back again. What makes this particularly exciting for us gardeners is that we can actually influence and optimize this cycle in our own plots. By understanding how nitrogen moves through our soil ecosystem, we can work with nature rather than against it, creating more productive and sustainable gardens. Let's follow a nitrogen molecule on its incredible journey. Our story begins in the atmosphere, where nitrogen gas floats around in a very stable, triple-bonded form. This stability is exactly what makes it so difficult for plants to use. It's like trying to break apart two people who are holding hands really tightly. The first step in making this nitrogen available is called nitrogen fixation. This is where certain bacteria perform what I like to call molecular magic. These specialized bacteria have the unique ability to break those strong bonds and convert atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia, which plants can actually use. It's one of the most energy-intensive biological processes on Earth, which tells you just how important it is. Once nitrogen is fixed into ammonia, it doesn't stop there. Through a process called nitrification, other bacteria convert ammonia into nitrites and then into nitrates. These nitrates are like the premium fuel for plants, easily absorbed and readily available. Your plant's roots can soak up these nitrates and use them to build proteins, chlorophyll, and all the essential compounds they need to grow strong and healthy. But the cycle doesn't end when plants absorb nitrogen. When plants die and decompose, or when animals that have eaten plants leave waste, the nitrogen returns to the soil. Here, decomposer bacteria break down organic matter, releasing nitrogen back into the soil where it can continue its journey. Some nitrogen also returns to the atmosphere through denitrification, completing the full circle. Now let's talk about the real heroes of the nitrogen cycle. The nitrogen-fixing bacteria. These microscopic powerhouses are doing the heavy lifting in your garden, and the best part is that many of them have formed incredible partnerships with plants. The most famous of these partnerships is between rhizobia bacteria and leguminous plants like beans, peas, clover, and alfalfa. If you've ever pulled up a bean plant and noticed those small round nodules on the roots, you've seen these bacterial communities in action. Inside those nodules, millions of bacteria are working around the clock, converting atmospheric nitrogen into forms the plant can use. In return, the plant provides the bacteria with carbohydrates and a safe place to live. It's a perfect example of mutual benefit that we can learn from. But legumes aren't the only plants with nitrogen-fixing partners. Some trees like alder and black locust also host nitrogen-fixing bacteria. These trees can dramatically improve soil fertility over time, which is why they're often used in reforestation projects and permaculture designs. What's particularly exciting for gardeners is that we can deliberately introduce and encourage these nitrogen-fixing relationships in our gardens. When you plant legumes, you're essentially installing living fertilizer factories that will continue working long after the growing season ends. The residual nitrogen they leave behind will benefit whatever you plant next. Understanding the nitrogen cycle completely changes how we approach fertilization. Many gardeners think of fertilizer as plant food, but it's more accurate to think of it as a nitrogen delivery system. When you add synthetic fertilizers to your soil, You're essentially bypassing parts of the natural nitrogen cycle and delivering nitrogen directly to your plants. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizers typically contain nitrogen in the form of nitrates or ammonium, which plants can use immediately. This is why you often see such quick results when you apply conventional fertilizers. You're giving plants exactly what they need in a form they can use right away. However, this immediate availability comes with some trade-offs. When you consistently rely on synthetic fertilizers, you can inadvertently disrupt the natural nitrogen cycle in your soil. The beneficial bacteria that normally help cycle nitrogen may become less active because they're not needed as much. It's like having a friend who always gives you rides. Eventually, you might forget how to take the bus. Organic fertilizers work differently. Materials like compost, aged manure, fish emulsion, and bone meal contain nitrogen in organic forms that need to be broken down by soil microorganisms before plants can use them. This process takes time, but it also feeds and supports the entire soil ecosystem. When you use organic fertilizers, you're not just feeding your plants, you're feeding the bacteria, fungi, and other organisms that make your soil healthy and productive. So how do we put this knowledge to work in our gardens? The key is to think like an ecosystem manager rather than just a plant grower. Here are some strategies that work with the nitrogen cycle rather than against it. First, embrace nitrogen-fixing plants in your garden design. Plant beans and peas not just for their harvest, but for their soil-building properties. Consider adding perennial nitrogen fixers like comfrey or clover as living mulches. Even if you're growing in containers, you can include small nitrogen-fixing plants as companions to your main crops. Second, focus on building soil organic matter. Every time you add compost, leaf mold, or other organic materials to your soil, you're providing the raw materials that soil bacteria need to keep the nitrogen cycle running smoothly. This organic matter also helps retain nutrients in the soil, preventing them from washing away with the first heavy rain. Third, avoid over-fertilizing, especially with synthetic nitrogen fertilizers. Too much readily available nitrogen can actually harm the beneficial bacteria in your soil and lead to nutrient imbalances. It's better to provide smaller, more frequent applications of fertilizer than to dump large amounts all at once. Finally, pay attention to soil pH and drainage. The bacteria that drive the nitrogen cycle work best in slightly acidic to neutral soils with good drainage. If your soil is too acidic or too alkaline, or if it stays waterlogged, these beneficial processes slow down significantly. The nitrogen cycle doesn't operate at the same pace year-round, and understanding these seasonal rhythms can help you time your gardening activities for maximum benefit. During warm, moist conditions in spring and early summer, bacterial activity is at its peak. This is when nitrogen fixation and nitrification happen most rapidly, making it an ideal time for planting nitrogen-hungry crops. Fall is actually one of the best times to plant nitrogen-fixing cover crops. Plants like crimson clover, winter peas, and hairy vetch will establish before winter, then explode into growth in early spring when soil bacteria become active again. By the time you're ready to plant your main crops, these cover crops will have fixed significant amounts of nitrogen and can be cut down and left to decompose, providing a slow-release nitrogen source. Winter might seem like a quiet time for the nitrogen cycle, but it's actually when a lot of important decomposition happens. The freeze-thaw cycles help break down organic matter, making nutrients more available for the spring growing season. Creating a nitrogen-smart garden isn't about following a rigid formula. It's about understanding the principles and adapting them to your specific situation. Start by observing your garden carefully. Which areas seem to produce healthy, vigorous plants year after year? Which spots always seem to struggle? Often, these differences come down to nitrogen availability and soil health. Test your soil regularly, not just for nitrogen levels but for organic matter content and pH. These tests will help you understand whether your soil's nitrogen cycle is functioning optimally. If you're seeing low organic matter levels or extreme pH readings, address these issues first before worrying about fertilizer applications. Consider your garden as a long-term investment in soil health. Every decision you make, from what you plant to how you fertilize to what you do with garden waste, affects the nitrogen cycle and the overall health of your soil ecosystem. When you work with these natural processes, you create a garden that becomes more productive and resilient over time. Remember, the most sustainable gardens are those that harness natural processes rather than fighting against them. By understanding and working with the nitrogen cycle, you're not just growing better plants. You're building a healthier, more productive piece of earth that will continue to improve with each passing season. The nitrogen cycle is one of nature's most elegant solutions to the challenge of sustaining life on Earth. As gardeners, we have the privilege of witnessing this process firsthand and the opportunity to participate in it thoughtfully. When we do, our gardens become not just more productive, but more connected to the larger web of life that surrounds us. If this deep dive into the nitrogen cycle has sparked your curiosity about soil science, make sure to subscribe to Soilsage Chronicles for more insights into the hidden world beneath our feet. Share this article with fellow gardeners who might benefit from understanding these fundamental soil processes. Together, we can all become better stewards of the earth we tend. What nitrogen cycle observations have you made in your own garden? Drop a comment below and let's continue the conversation.